I was very optimistic. I think this is where I was trying to be like courteous to myself. That planning sent me into a little bit of a spiral. Hi guys, Happy New Year. I wouldn't call myself a resolutions person. I think the word resolutions introduces a lot of pressures, but I'm very into setting goals. Even if I don't achieve them, I like to use fresh starts as a way to kind of imagine what my progress could be for the year and manifest something close to that. I knew I had written down goals for 2025 last year, but I couldn't remember much of them and I hadn't checked in on them much. So what I ended up doing was filming a video where I looked through those goals for the first time since writing them down and talked about how that went and then set some new goals for 2026. It was an interesting experiment. I am happier with how it went than I thought I'd be, even though I really did have some wild goals in there. But hey, sometimes you have to be a little delusional. And honestly, I hope to be a little bit more delusional this year. I opened the notebook to look at it before I started filming and then saw a long list of stuff there and just immediately closed it. And I was like, you know what? I will digest this on camera and then see what I think, because I remember some of them. I was very optimistic, and while also being at the center of like starting a lot of new things for me. Like I started a new job on January 6th last year, had a new routine, a lot of new things. So I do think, given that, some of my ideas were pretty optimistic and potentially unfeasible. So we're gonna look at this together. Some of them were habit-based, and I will say that depending on the time of year, I did a lot better with these. And they were based on things that I knew I could do based on like previous habits when it came to writing, especially in past years. Oh God. Looking at my habit-based writing goals, I wanted to spend 30 minutes at least locked in on my manuscript every day, not including research, because I can get bogged down in research and like looking things up and just like thinking about things and not really like commit to anything. That definitely did not happen. I would not say that that's what I did daily. I definitely have periods of the year where I was locked in at least 30 minutes a day every day for like a month, or longer periods that probably averaged out to that, with the summer especially. But daily, no. January threw me off. Hi, Potato. I'm in Tampa and I had to go to Virginia to train in person for 3 weeks in January last year. It was really cold, and then I came home for 1 week and had to fly back there for another week in the beginning of February. And so it was a lot. January and February were basically a crapshoot for anything. Then March, I was still kind of getting settled into the routine with my new job. I would say April and May, I definitely had a lot more daily habits oriented around writing. June and July, I really like locked in, I would say. Okay, I also had weekly goals. I think this is where I was trying to be like courteous to myself, knowing that the daily was like a dream. Complete 3 1-hour writing sessions a week, broken into 15-minute sprints. I'm not very good at doing sprints. They're effective when I do them, but when I'm by myself or when I tend to just have like a set amount of time, and I try to stay focused as much as I can and like wander off here and there, but I get pretty locked in, so I don't really need to do a sprint. It just kind of depends. So I wouldn't say that I did a lot of sprints, but I definitely did a lot of like 1-hour writing sessions a week. April through August, I would say there was a lot of that, because if I didn't get one of those done during the week, I definitely had 2 to 3 hours, if not more, on the weekend. I was really dedicated from like April to August when it came to writing. September as well. The ends of the year, the beginning was a lot. It's funny because at the beginning of the year, I was planning what I wanted to do for draft 2, and that planning sent me into a little bit of a spiral. And it's funny because now, or after August, I was in the same stage again. I went from May to August, drafting draft 2, and then August to September, and pretty much the entirety of the fall was planning what I wanted to do for draft 3, which sent me into another spiral. And also, I'm a federal contractor. There's a government shutdown that stressed me out. There's a lot of things stressful in the fall. So it's just at both ends were really stressful parts of the revising process for me, and also stressful life. April through August, I'm pretty happy with my habits. This is monthly. This one's actually pretty good. Monthly, connect and reach out to critique partners and writer colleagues in some way once a month, whether that's alpha reading for them or discussions, etc. I would say that I joined And I think I made this goal before I had a critique group. I had some writer friends that like were options that I've shared with before who have shared with me, but I didn't have a dedicated writing group until I want to say February is when I completed the survey that someone shared in a Discord where an editor was putting together a critique partner match. And so I filled out the survey, got put into a group of 4 ladies, and we've been meeting at least once a month since then, if not sometimes more when there's been like more momentum. It's just been a really great experience. I love those ladies. I love their stories. I love sharing my story with them and learning from them. And we've come a long way. That is something that I did do. I didn't think I was going to have a lot of goals that I could check off here. So I'm happy about the habit-based ones. And I'm glad that I had that in mind. The habit-based ones feel a little bit more in my control, even though there were some extenuating circumstances. A general craft habit I wanted to achieve. I wanted to read more Gothic fiction because I knew I really wanted to work on my Gothic horror, romance, romantic fantasy. I wanted to work more on that this year because I really want to lean into Gothic tropes. And that one, like tried and true Gothic tropes. So I wanted to like engage more with Gothic literature this year. I'll have to go look back at my Goodreads, but I don't know how well I did on this. It's funny because I said I wanted to read more Gothic fiction and more short stories. And one thing that I do remember is I read a Gothic fiction anthology from Briar Press, but I really enjoyed that. I think that was like the main thing. I think I literally was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And then I maybe didn't do much more after that, but we'll see. I made project-based writing goals, and this is the one where I'm like, the idea that I was going to accomplish progress on more than one project. It was a good idea. It did not happen. For Project Diadem, my main work in progress at the moment, I'm on draft 3. I said I wanted to finish the second draft by the end of February. I don't think I understood then how much I needed to do. I think that was the issue. I remember what happened. I started Project Diadem in November 2023. I finished the first draft in September 2024. Okay. And then I started revising it to the point where most of Act 1 was revised around December. I was just like, oh, I need to keep going. I had to take a break, basically. I realized that Act 2 was so messed up, basically, and it needed a lot of restructuring and a lot of work. In my mind, I was like, oh, I've made good progress with Act 1. I instead spent January by February just like reading craft advice and structure and pacing advice and thinking through what I wanted my Act 2 to look like and what I wanted to set up. And then I spent a lot of March, pretty much all of March, and a good bit of April just planning it out, like over and over again and thinking through, like doing a bunch of read-throughs and a bunch of like ideas of where things needed to go that were missing and what I wanted to cut and combine. That's what I really focused on when I was planning things out. But I ended up also making a lot of notes for things and scenes that needed to be added. And in my previous videos, if you've watched them, I then really regretted that. Not regretted, I needed to add those things, but I ended up with a really overloaded front half of Act 2 in draft 2, and it is what it is. I'm working through it now. I know the characters in the story a lot better, though, than I did before, and so I am happy with it, but, you know, I wanted to circulate it to alpha readers, pull feedback into the third draft by end of May. Crazy. So this is something that I did stick with for a while. I really did think that by October, my manuscript could be close to, like a close to final stage for, like, more line level editing and getting it ready for querying in November, potentially. I knew pretty soon that the February thing wasn't going to work out. I think I realized that like almost as soon as I wrote these goals. But I had this new goal of finishing my full second draft by August 1st, July 31st, spending August and September revising as it was like being circulated to my critique partners or alpha readers, beta readers, and then using October and November to revise it some more and do some more line level polishing and prep my query materials. I stuck with this for a long time, especially since I did actually finish draft 2 at the end of July. But August, I was pretty burnt out. I was writing so much from May to July that I'm not surprised that I got a little burnt out then. And I didn't try to push past it, honestly. I understood that I needed to take a break. I ended my draft 2 with 140,000 words. And the original draft was 108,000. And then my Act 2, because I have some pacing guides that I follow, and my Act 2, specifically the first half of Act 2, was like over what it should probably have been by like 25,000 words. And other parts were over too. Mainly that was my main like egregious issue. It was pretty clear that I was going to have to do some major rethinking and restructuring, and that having it query ready by the end of the year even was not going to happen. Just to give a little update where we are at with Project Diadem, it's January, and I would say November, the end of November, I finally kind of wrapped up the planning stage for draft 3. I did a lot of planning this fall, a lot of read-throughs and just figuring things out and figuring what needed to be cut. And I did some editing of Act 1, some restructuring of Act 1, and a little bit of Act 2 even in the fall as well. Draft 3 is underway. I'm in like the middle of Act 2A, I would say. I'm gonna start more regularly working in the draft again. I'm hoping to have some more progress that looks similar to what it did last year in the summer, but I have some life changes again coming soon, and so who knows? We'll see. It would be nice if I could have some of that progress again. I have like 4 other projects on here that I have project-based goals for. Project Struck is my plains gothic fantasy with like a huge romantic subplot and horror elements, right? Think meteorologists haunted by sentient storms in a kind of 1950s-esque second world fantasy setting. That's like akin to the Midwest plains, I would say. I wanted to finish the first draft of that by June. I wanted to revise at least once by the end of 2025 and send to Kitty Partners by the end of the year. I have been sending snippets of it to my mom and sharing snippets of it with my husband, as I have had random scenes developed here and there for Struck. In October, I did like a trip to DC, and on that trip, I let myself focus on revising or putting together my revision outline for Project Diadem, but I also gave myself some time to work more on this Project Struck outline and just kind of revamp what I've had planned for years, but needed to like put it aside and come back to the drawing board for it. Project Struck is something where I've had versions of an outline and versions of scenes and character information planned for quite a while, and I really want to actually focus on it. I think it's a good story. It's going to be the story of my heart for a while, I think, until I can get it out. I wish I would have dedicated more time to it this year. I'm happy with the progress I had and the time that I did dedicate to it, because it was not that much, which just goes to show how little amount of time you need to dedicate to something to get progress, because I did not dedicate much time to this, and I still feel like I made a good amount of progress in like figuring out a clear idea, getting some core like emotional scenes down to guide me, and like truly understanding my characters so that I'm not going through some of the issues I had with Project Diadem, where I had to revise a lot due to not truly understanding the characters and the themes. I have that down from the get-go this time. And again, when I was reading those craft books in January of 2025 and like planning my revision for Diadem while I was doing that, I was also going through and making notes for Struck. So I did a little work then too that I honestly kind of forgot about, and it really came in handy when I did start thinking about Struck again. But I didn't hit those goals, but I'm proud of what I've done with Struck. Project Trees is that's the first book that I really started writing seriously in 2022 maybe. Well, it doesn't matter. I've had snippets of it for a while, but I started writing it more so in early 2023 and kind of put it aside to work on Diadem in November 2023, and I've worked on it on the side randomly here and there. That one is kind of meant to be a trilogy, and it's not something I ever really wanted to query. It's kind of something that I imagine myself self-publishing one day, maybe. I have a lot done there, like maybe 50% to 75% of a first draft, and I have a very detailed outline of the first book and semi-detailed outlines of books 2 and 3, but I wanted to like redo the first draft, basically. I said I wanted to finish the first draft by August. I don't think I had as many plans to redo the first draft, if that makes sense, when I wrote this. I've since rethought it a lot, and I wanted to outline books 2 and 3 by August. I will say that I think I only had concepts of an outline at this point in time. I will say I do have outlines for book 2 and 3. They're not very detailed, but they're more than what I had before, and there's like an overarching story there. And I've done a lot of research on structure for series and for trilogies especially since then that has helped inform some of this. So I don't think I've written in scene in the entirety of 2025. No, that's not true. I think maybe in the beginning of the year I did. But I do want to get back to that because there's a good story there. It's a good story that I've already thought out, already figured out. There's some fun stuff to explore character-wise and tension-wise, and there's a full cast and found family and epic fantasy, some like light necromancy. So I do kind of want to get back to that at some point. So There's like a rom-com too that I'm not going to get into. I did not make any movement on there. I don't think I even thought about it, to be honest. The short stories is something I do want to talk about. I wanted to write / draft / edit 1 to 2 short stories to submit them somewhere by the end of the year. I wrote this down in January. While I was training in Virginia, I started pitching to myself short story ideas, and I outlined one, and then I started writing one. I have not revisited that short story since. A horror press, I think, popped up on Instagram that was doing calls for submissions for a short story, and I made a bunch of plans to submit to that, and I even wrote a pitch for it. Maybe not fully fledged, but snippets, and I did a lot of research because it was based off an idea that I had for a full-length novel, and I kind of wanted to try like a mini backstory to it first. But I did not submit that because it was like early December, I think, or mid-December. I was traveling, and it just did not work out time-wise. And I also wasn't as passionate enough about the short story that I was proposing as maybe I wanted to be, so I ultimately didn't do it. But I think that exercising my creative energy to think about it and like put something together for it, especially since I do have that full-length novel for far in the future kind of bouncing around in my head, since I do have that, I think it was a good exercise. And so that is technically 2 different short stories that I have worked on this year, but I did not fully write either of them. But, I think we're going to give me it because it was hard. Last year, I wrote down that I had 105, I'm going to round it up to 106,000 just because it's pretty close, 106,000 total words written based on my Scrivener counts. I don't think I was including note counts. Scrivener will separate it out. So I think that's just words in my drafts in Scrivener. And then specifically 86,000 of those were for Project Diadem. And I do have updated 2025 word counts somewhere. I will share that in a minute. But my goals for 2025 were it's a total of 200,000. I'm pretty sure that's not true. I think it's closer to what I got last year. I think I really thought starting my new job was going to like lead to some good habits, and it did. But I don't know. I thought I was going to have like a crazy amount of time to write. I don't know why I thought that. Well, to be fair, I thought I was going to finish 2 drafts of Diadem. I thought I was going to do a draft of Struck and another draft of Trees. 2 short stories. So I guess that might have been why I thought I could get 200,000 words there. I also completely forgot to mention something very important. I wrote in my habit-based goals section that I wanted to vlog my progress in whatever I was working on for a new YouTube channel. I wanted to post once a week at least, but try to film daily. I didn't get started on this until April. Once I started really losing my mind with revision planning, decided to vlog at first just to kind of like verbally process what I was deciding. I was like, oh, I'm just filming. I'm not going to post it anywhere. I don't have actual plans. But then I did. Then I was like, obviously, I'm filming it. I'm going to use it. I'm going to post it. I've actually really, really enjoyed the verbal processing part of this. I have not been able to film daily by any means. In fact, a lot of the time, I'll just take a little snippet of the coffee shop I'm working at and the croissant that I get or something, and then talk like every few weeks and post monthly, basically. And that's unfortunately led to me being pretty behind in terms of content that I have recorded and where I'm at posting, and thus I'm like farther ahead in my progress than what I've posted. I'm finally at a point where I'm caught up, and I like that because I would like to try again to do something more frequent, and we'll get to that. And I did make progress in that, and I am proud of myself for that because it is a little vulnerable filming yourself crash out about writing and put it on YouTube and act like anyone wants to hear about it. So I'm glad that I did it. For Project Diadem, I'm in the middle of draft 3. I would love to have it finished by April, and I have some life changes coming up. I'm not exactly sure that'll impact this. It might be really good for it, might be really bad for it. I think it's a little bit more realistic than what I had for last year. But still, I want to circulate to my critique partners and other people and potentially revise again by June. That's a little bit crazy, I think. Maybe July. But then I have this like overarching goal to like query in the fall, which even just like saying that, hi kitty, I know that that's like quite a stretch. I know that if I was dedicating all of my time to this, that I could move through these drafts pretty quickly and I could have it query ready like in summer. But I have a lot of obligations and that's just not realistic. And with those obligations, fall I think is still kind of a reach. But especially because I also have life plans for the fall, which I will get to in my general life goals. But I'm going to keep it as is. shoot a little bit for the stars there in terms of still being kind of a reach, but I would like to try. For Project Struck, I feel so into Project Struck these days. I really want to work on it. I kind of want to keep doing what I've been doing the past few months, where I've been kind of drafting random scenes here and there and like building up this kind of zero draft. And I think I want to just find some blocks of time to just fully send on a nice zero draft and not think about it too seriously, especially since I put so much work into the outlining and the planning that I think I could have a nice zero draft done by, I said in spring. I'm giving myself some wiggle room there with what spring means. I think I can do that, but it's hard for me to work on multiple projects at once, but it's nice, especially considering I know I'm in the long haul for this revision with Diadem. And so being able to just draft for Struck has been fun when I've been able to do it, and I love doing that. I love discovery writing through that. What is kind of crazy here is that I would want to revise to a cleaner first draft, closer to a second draft by August. That seems like kind of a crapshoot, but potentially to have ready for critique partners or alpha readers by fall, September maybe even. There's like a thing I would like to submit that story in particular to in September. I kind of have that in mind, but ideally, I should have drafted it last year for that. So we'll see. Short stories. Same goal. I want to finish the short story that I thought a lot about, outlined, and started. I think that one has a lot of potential. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, that could be a really good, like, full-length horror novel. But I think let's not get ahead of ourselves, guys. Let's finish the short story. We'll see where that goes. See if I want to submit it anywhere. Project Trees. Well, I wrote, I'm being so gentle with myself here while also still being kind of pushy. Basically, I wrote that I should continue to use it as an escape from my other projects when I need and or want to, which is me being very gentle, but also saying, please work on this because there's so much there and it makes you happy. So why not work on it? I do have a new project here that I've been, again, thinking of for years, but it's a middle grade project that I have a lot of ideas for. I have kind of concepts of an outline for as well. And I just wrote, find a long weekend in zero draft. I think I could do that. It's kind of like R.L. Stine vibes for middle grade, I would say. And so maybe about 30,000 words full length. And I think I really could find like a long weekend in zero draft. I think it would need some voice training, some like tonal training. So I might need to do some reading in that like younger thriller horror genre closer to when I'm doing that, so that I feel really like ready to take on that voice. That's something that I think would be fun to do. I like that story. Project Fiends is what I'm calling it. Towards my habit-based goals, very similar, just because I did like the ones that I came up with last year. I don't want to go too crazy, but I don't want to back down too much because I liked that I don't know, I liked the balance I ended up having. But daily, I focus less on writing here and more on like other things that I want to incorporate into my day. So walking or being active for at least 15 minutes a day, I do pretty good with this already. Most days of the week, I would say 5 out of 7 days of the week, I take a 45-minute walk in the evening when I can. And so I think that'll be achieved pretty easily, but I do want to try and do more encouragement for the days that I'm not walking or I can't walk to find ways to be active another way. Read for about 15 minutes a day leisurely, which is so funny because I almost always do. I don't ever have a problem with that, but let's get credit for it, okay? Let's set it as a goal and get credit for it. But especially because I think I'm going to have to do a lot more non-leisurely reading this year, rather it be for PhD stuff or like writing research. I said partake in a creative hobby or form of creative expression for 30 minutes a day instead of doom scrolling. So that's like instead of my like write for 30 minutes a day, because I can't do that daily, but I think there is definitely room to partake in creative expression in some form instead of doom scrolling, because I definitely spend 30 minutes a day doing that. I'm a painter. I don't paint enough. I would like to paint more, and so that's like one way to do that. I'm trying to start knitting, and after having not knitted since I was a child, there's just like a lot of options. It doesn't always have to be writing. I did write that I wanted to try to film and document things for YouTube vlogs every other day. I don't think that's going to happen either, but just more regularly so that I can then on the weekly based habits aim for a more consistent bi-weekly vlog schedule. We'll see if that happens. In terms of my other weekly habit-based goals, 3 one-hour writing sessions a week. That was my goal last year. It worked out really well. I would like to track it better this year because I honestly think that more times than not, I met that last year. And at least on average, I definitely met it. So maybe if I could find a way to track it better, either through vlogging or just, in my notebook. So for monthly, I want to continue my monthly goal of last year that I did really well on and enjoyed the most out of any of my goals, which is monthly or more frequently swap or discussion with critique partners. Excited to do that again. by far the most enjoyable of all my goals last year. And I want to try and get to a point where I can share my entire revised manuscript this year with my critique group, since they know so much about the book already and have read still only, I would say, 30%. No, maybe like 35% of the book. I want them to read the rest. Life goals in general, I didn't talk about my big one from 2025 because I hadn't written it down, but it was a big goal of mine, which was to apply for Luxembourg nationality through Ancestry. That was something that I figured out I was eligible to do in February, basically, end of January, February of 2025. I actually didn't even think I was eligible. I knew my mom was, is what I figured out. And I did a whole bunch of research to help her do that with the idea that one day when she got it, I could do it. And then I found out that I was also eligible in the same sort of like relatively easy way that she was. And I spent a lot of February and March and April collecting documents. And then in April, I submitted that application to the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg. And I received my citizenship confirmation unofficially in June, but I was a citizen in June, basically. And officially knew for sure I was a citizen in August. In October, I went to DC and I got a passport appointment that I did at the Luxembourg embassy, and then I received passport in the mail in November. So it's crazy that I did all that in a relatively short amount of time. Pretty proud of that accomplishment from last year. I mean, it's not something to be proud of. It's an insane privilege. Like, it's not something that you can really control, having like lineage like that. It's wild that I qualified for that. But I'm proud of myself for the work I put into recovering some of those documents and really sticking to figuring out how to make this work in that sense. For life goals for 2026, my partner and I want to move abroad. I'm not going to say too much more on our plans for that just because I'm hesitant. We have some somewhat definitive plans, but I'm just going to leave it there for now. Maybe I could be more specific later on. I also want to make moves, I think, to shake up my career and solidify my PhD plans, but how that's going to happen and what that's going to look like, I do not know. The next 2 months are really kind of decide a lot of that for me. I'm in public health. It's been a hard time for public health. 2025 was a really hard time for public health. I'm not going to talk more about that. It's just something that's weighing on me and I need to make some changes because mental health is important and there is more to life than this, honestly. Again, I want to focus more on creative hobbies and creative expression that's not writing, sewing or knitting or my paintings or gardening. I have a lot of options. I'm excited for this year. I'm excited to make some more progress on these projects, and I'm excited to really try hard to post more on YouTube. I've enjoyed doing it since April. I don't know if it's been great for my progress. I think my progress has been what it has been. It's been really good because I had plans and ideas I was able to put into action all of a sudden in the summer mainly. But I will say I think it's been good for my mental health to like look back on some of these vlogs months later as I'm editing them for YouTube and see very objectively that I was accomplishing things that I set out to accomplish, even if I thought I wasn't. So I think that's like the biggest part of what I've taken and gained from this YouTube experience in 2025. And so I hope to do more of that in 2026, and hopefully that can involve more frequent posting. Fingers crossed. Thanks for watching, and if you have any specific 2026 goals that you're looking forward to, please let me know in the comments.